All right, so let's demystify a little bit about using MongoDB in cloud-based database as service, such as MongoDB Atlas. So I assume right now that you have MongoDB set up locally on your computer, and you're able to start the database locally, whether using Mac or Linux or whatnot, and play around with it locally, right? But we will need to manage large data sets, and we probably will need to use the cloud database as service. So we gotta do that. A good solution, not the only one, but the one that we will be using is MongoDB Atlas. So the first things first, we will need to get started with it and sign up for the service. So the sign up process itself is pretty straightforward. But you can sign up with Google, or you can sign in using your email. I guess I will go and sign in using my email. So we'll go with that. And and I'll use one of these emails that I have. And make yourself a password, right? And right, agree to terms of service and whatnot. You might have to verify it, but we will deal with that when we deal with that. Yeah, great. Now verify your email. So I guess I'm gonna go to my email and verify it. So I'll see you after verification. All right, so now that I'm verified, you can set up a couple of multi-factor authentication methods, whatnot, such as email authentication. And I think you even do text message, but let's not worry about that right now, because what we are really worried about is actual functionality and not how to create accounts. So we'll say remind me later for now. And by remind us later, we will go to setup. Okay, cool. Let's see what we have here. Um, this is basically our like start page where everything is. Um, it decided to name my organization because that's what name I provided for it. If we go here, we have clusters, help, my account here, verification, and so on and so forth. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to create a cloud database and load some mock data into it so that we can connect to it and then work with that mock data. Now, again, I'm assuming that you have MongoDB set up locally on your own laptop, so or computer, whatever. So I guess you could take the whole let's say zip file of data, and you can import it locally on your computer and whatnot and work with it there. But what we are going to do is locally from our computer connect to the cloud database and work with it. Basically, simulating kind of like a real world scenario. First of all, we will need a cluster. A cluster is gonna be like a cluster, somewhere where we're gonna keep our data. Think of it like a shelf and whatnot. So we'll create that, and it's fairly straightforward. Uh, we'll choose a free one. Name it whatever you want. Select whatever. I'm gonna go Virginia East, whatnot. Sometimes it will select for you. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will use the least loaded one. In this case, it doesn't really matter. I'm just picking the one closest to me. Provider doesn't really matter. In our case, just for learning doesn't really matter. If we were making a production level application and we needed to figure out how much data we're going to be using and whatnot, then I guess that would matter. But for now, does not matter. It will choose AWS for us by default. And I'll call it our test cluster. Cool. All right. Now, we'll need an optional tag. I guess we don't need that. Advanced configuration. We definitely do not need advanced configuration. We just need to be working. We just need to be working with the cloud database. So let's create this deployment. You might get something like that. All right, let's train some Google AI. Buses, more buses, buses, and no more buses. I promise I'm not a robot. Alrighty, so here's the interesting part, right? A couple of things that we will need. We will need the password and the username for the database. The more important part here is the password because we're gonna be needing it to connect to our database. So I'm gonna copy this password. I am going to copy and paste it to Google Docs because I definitely need this password. Great. So I have that. And I guess I'll remember my username because it's my first and last name. So I guess we'll keep it at that. And we can create a database user. Okay. So we have that. Then we go to choose a connection method. For now, we don't need to do this, but we'll come back to it and just let's make sure that our cluster works correctly. I'll close this up. And if I go to my cluster, so it's US Virginia, US East, and by default, it generally loads a sample data set. I'll show you what to do if it did not load a sample data set, but it generally will load it. We can click on Data Explorer to see what's in there. Can go through a tour there. So by default, it loaded the sample mplix dataset. So think about this way: we created a database cluster, and then MongoDB said, "Okay, well, you want to do what? Well, you want to play around with the database. So I'm going to give you a sample dataset, whatnot." To play around with. You might not have it immediately, so we'll erase this for now, just so that we can recreate it. But you might have it immediately. It's going to depend on your defaults and how your defaults were set. But for now, that is there. The first thing, though, what we want to do is go to network access. And allow all connections. Why? Because if you are frequently on the move and whatnot, if you use different proxies, VPNs, whatnot, I'm a fan of that. For example, like I don't want people snooping in on me and so on. So like I change my I change my connections. I change my IP addresses. You need to tell the database that, okay, in this case, accept all connections. Now, generally, you really don't want to do that in the production level database. Because in the production level database, you want to only accept connections from your application. So let's say your application is being hosted on 111.111.111.111 or whatever the IP address. And that application is accepting requests from any client, and only 111.111.111.111 can access the database, can send requests to the database, because a client or the user accesses your application, does something on your application being hosted somewhere, and then only that application can say, okay, now I understand the user request, I'm gonna go to the database and get some data or create some data or whatnot. But in this case, we just want to play around with it. Whether you're at a library, at a friend's house, whatever, you're in a dorm room, it doesn't matter, because your IP actually is going to be changing a lot, and if you want to watch streaming services all over the world, you're definitely going to be changing your IP address, probably like with VPNs. So in this case, you got database access, or sorry, network access. You're going to say, you know what? No, we're going to allow access from anywhere, meaning any IP address can, oops, any IP address can access this, and there. Okay, it will take a second. Still pending. That will take a second. Maybe we'll refresh it. All right, it will be pending, so we'll come back to it. Basically, what we said, hey, any IP address, it doesn't matter if I'm on my home laptop, if I'm like on a school laptop, if I'm on home Wi-Fi, Starbucks Wi-Fi, whatever. If I'm accessing this cluster, this is all good, no problem. Again, in a production level application, you really don't want to do that because it's a security issue. But for our purposes, this is just fine. This is just dandy. So now let's see what to do if a sample data set did not load automatically. So for that, we will need to go to clusters. And what do I need to do? I want to delete the data set because I want to say that, hey, it didn't load automatically. So let's actually basically load it from whatever one of their sample data sets. So there's like movies, Airbnb, I think like Food Network, something like that. All right, so collections, something, okay. So we have a sample mflix collection. So let's delete that. Let's delete that, drop that. Okay, so in this case, in this setup, we've registered, created a new cluster, right? It takes us to the home page. We set the network access to any IP, right? And we need, some sort of a data set to play with. Okay, so let's do that. Let's open up a test cluster or whatever you've named it. And let's go to collections. And we'll say, you know what? Load a sample data set. This is actually a new thing. Before you had to do a command, so this is I guess pretty cool. Load a sample data set. And we have this sample mflix, but there's others, right? Analytics, weather reports. What we need in this case, and that's a default one now, seems like. Sample mflix. We will select that, or if we want to select multiple ones, we can select multiple ones, but let's keep it simple for now. And we will load this up. And this is gonna take a few minutes. So unless you want to hear me babble on, we'll come back in a minute. Yay! A sample mflix dataset is loaded, so that's all good. And now we can explore it. We can explore everything that we have in here: movies, sessions, theaters, whatnot. So it's kind of like a Netflix database, whatnot. And we can type in queries in here, work with them, and so on. We can take a look, some anti-patterns, whatnot. So no schema suggest for now because it's actually their own schema. So that'd be kind of funny if they had criticism of their own database. But if you would have your own, if you would create your own database, the database schema, you can take a look at the analysis here. And I think that's about it. This is where we're gonna pause this off because as long as Atlas is set up, as long as some sort of cluster set up, as long as some have data set up, let's then take a look at the ways we can connect to this cloud databases, database as service from our computer, right? And what I mean by that, either through MongoDB Compass, which is our GUI, or just in a regular Node.js application, just using like a simple Node.js request, and maybe even through our terminal shell. So let's do that next and kind of like demystify what's going on.